As I was eagerly preparing everything to return home for Christmas with my parents, I was shocked to learn that I hadn't been invited. I was devastated to find out they had held the Christmas celebration early at my sister Emily's place, with distant relatives in attendance. I couldn't help but wonder, do they even consider me family anymore? Just a week later, when I opened an envelope containing a bill for $52,250, the answer became clear. To them, I was nothing more than a walking ATM. And that was the moment I decided there was no reason to endure another 10 years of financial manipulation. Before you hear my story, comment the city you're living in, so we can begin right now. I am Samantha Roberts, 30 years old, born and raised in Charleston, South Carolina, in a family that, from the outside, looked like prestige, magazine covers, and picture-perfect holiday photos. My father, Carter, is a senator. My mother, Madeline, runs a children's charity. And me? I'm the eldest daughter, and the only one who ever lived outside their control. When I was 8, I would often sit in the small basement library, reading while my mother and my younger sister Emily posed for the local paper. Emily was always smiling, always photogenic. I wasn't. "Samantha, lift your chin a little. You look too cold," my mother would remind me over and over. Emily, 4 years younger than me, was spoiled from the start. She loved the spotlight, knew how to say the right sweet things at the right time, and quickly learned how to please our mother. I, on the other hand, was studious, calm, and avoided attention. Once, when I won the statewide award for academic excellence, my father said simply, "You did great, but don't let your achievements isolate you from the family." When I was 12, Emily received an imported Disney princess dress for her birthday. I got a set of advanced math books. I didn't feel sad, I just thought they loved her more because she needed to be loved. Me, they must have thought, needed nothing. In high school, I was in the honors program. Emily joined 3 clubs and quit all of them. But when she was chosen as a cheerleading rep for homecoming, the whole family came out to cheer. When I won a national academic award, my mother just texted, "Well done, don't forget to sleep enough." In my senior year, I received a full scholarship to Harvard. I flew to Boston alone, rented a small room in an old dorm, bought my own supplies, figured out extra tuition costs, and learned how to open a bank account. No farewell party, no last-minute advice. "You're used to being independent," my mother said, as if that were something to be proud of. Meanwhile, Emily dropped out of college after just 1 semester. She said the program was too rigid, not suited to a creative person like herself. Our parents didn't scold her. They rented her an apartment near a studio, calling it a growth environment. Me? I was told not to brag about my academics on Facebook, because Emily might feel hurt. At 25, I became a financial analyst at a major firm in San Francisco. 2 years later, when I texted about a promotion, my mother replied with a thumbs-up emoji. Weeks later, she called, not to congratulate me, but to ask if I could help cover Emily's summer tuition because she's figuring things out. I sent the money. I always did. Roof repairs, summer dance classes, down payments for my mother's charity events. It started with a few $100s, then thousands. My parents didn't order me. They'd say things like, "You're the only one capable." And I, out of habit, always nodded. At 29, Emily maxed out her credit card from overspending. I paid off $12,800, thinking that would be the last time. But just 2 months later, she texted again, "My car's acting up, can you front me some money?" I didn't reply immediately because I was starting to feel exhausted. Last summer, I planned a vacation for the whole family in Manhattan, a chance to reconnect. I booked the hotel, bought Broadway tickets, selected the restaurants. But during the entire trip, Emily remained the center. My mother criticized me for working too much. My father said I lacked flexibility. No one noticed I'd paid for everything. Then, last December, while working at the office, I stumbled across a family photo on Instagram. They were celebrating Christmas early, surrounded by relatives without me. I hadn't been invited, not a call, not a message. I called my mother immediately. She said, "Emily said you were busy. I thought you weren't coming." When I pressed her, she added gently, "You're strong, sweetie. We'll see you next Christmas." That's when I realized, in their eyes, my presence was never necessary. I was a walking ATM, not a family member. And then, a week later, they tossed me an enormous bill I had never been warned about. And that was the moment everything changed. That morning began like any other. I turned on the coffee machine, checked my emails while waiting for the water to boil, thinking I'd skim a few reports before heading to the office on time. But at the top of my inbox, amidst the usual bank notifications, a single line made my heart skip a beat. Co-signer confirmation for auto loan, Mercedes GLC 300. I clicked the email before I could even process what I had done wrong. Attached was a loan contract worth $52,250. Primary borrower, Emily Roberts. Co-signer, Samantha D. Roberts. At the bottom of the page, the signature. It was mine. Or rather, a near-perfect replica of it. I scrolled down a few more lines, and my heart sank when I saw a familiar slanted handwriting in the margin. Family always supports each other. I set the coffee down, untouched. My hands trembled. I called my mother. She picked up quickly, her voice calm as always, as if I were calling to ask for her winter chicken soup recipe. I asked bluntly, "Mom, what's going on with Emily's car? Why is my name on that loan?" She paused, then replied in the tone of someone discussing the weather. "Oh, she needed a car for meetings. I knew you wouldn't mind, so I signed it for you. You're busy, right?" I gripped the phone. "You signed? For me?" "Don't be so dramatic, Samantha. This is a family matter. Let's not blow it out of proportion." I hung up before saying something I'd regret. That afternoon, I printed the contract and brought it to my father's office on Capitol Hill. He looked at me, then the paper, without a trace of surprise. I asked, "Did you know about this?" He sighed, removed his glasses, and laid them on the desk. "You need to understand, Emily is at a critical juncture. Some big influencer deals, some promising connections. She needs the right vehicle. Loans, co-signing, these are things well-off families do." I was stunned. "Dad, that's a forged signature. I never agreed to anything." "Samantha, you're overreacting. It's family. We help each other. Does it have to be this rigid?" That sentence, no yelling, no anger, but it cut deeper than any rebuke. In that moment, I realized, to my father, I wasn't his daughter. I was an obstacle, the one who refused to follow family protocol. That evening, sitting in the kitchen under a dim light, just bright enough to see the contract's lines clearly, my phone buzzed. A message from Emily. "The new car is amazing. I knew you'd support me, as always." Followed by a black heart emoji. No request. No thank you. Just confirmation. They assumed I'd stay silent, as always. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my old laptop, the MacBook I had gifted my parents years ago so they could video call relatives. Strangely, I had a gut feeling something was wrong. I opened the system log, checked the login history from linked IPs. And then, I froze. There had been a login to my auxiliary savings account at Morgan Stanley, a private account I'd never told anyone about, except my financial advisor. That was the final straw. I immediately called Leah, my closest friend from high school, now a tax and finance attorney in Boston. I barely spoke before she heard something off in my voice. "Send me all the emails and documents. I know someone, Natalie Hoffman, specializes in financial fraud within families. She's tough, but deeply trustworthy." The next morning, exactly at 10 a.m., I met Natalie in a quiet office in San Francisco. She didn't look at me with pity, but with the eyes of someone who had seen too many victims of love-wrapped abuse. I handed her the car loan, the loan approval email, screenshots of Emily's message, the login log. Natalie took notes quietly, then pulled out a blank sheet and drew 3 bullet points. "Samantha, you have 3 options. 1. File a fraud report with the bank. 2. Send a cease and desist letter regarding any actions taken on your behalf. 3. Pursue criminal charges against your mother and those involved." I swallowed hard, not out of legal fear but because I knew if I took this path, there was no turning back. Natalie looked at me and set her pen down. "You have every right to do nothing. But if you choose to proceed, understand this. From this point on, you won't be seen as the obedient family member anymore. You'll be the rebel." I thought of every dollar I'd sent, every party I'd been excluded from, every time I pretended it was fine when I saw myself removed from the family group chat because someone forgot to update the email list. I looked at Natalie. "Help me, let's start." That night, I changed all my passwords, disconnected every account from any device ever linked to the family. I sent an email to my parents. No blame, no explanations, just one single line. "From this point forward, any financial matter involving me must be verified directly. Any attempt at forgery will be pursued legally." My mother replied in less than 5 minutes. "You're making a fuss over nothing, but if that's your choice, I won't interfere." I sat on the balcony. It had just rained. The air clung damp and cold to the railing. The city still shimmered in the distance, but I felt as though I had stepped into an entirely new place. No more family group pings, no more urgent requests for Emily's support. For the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty for saying no. I just felt light. But within that lightness was a strange emptiness, like I had finally shrugged off a burden, only to discover the grooves left behind by its straps were deep, unseen scars. I used to think that if I just spoke up, they would stop. But for the first time I realized they didn't know how to stop. They only changed how they manipulated. Friday afternoon, just as I was about to shut my laptop and close out the work week, I received a dinner invitation from my mother, accompanied by a message. "The whole family wants to talk to you. About the car, about Emily, about everything. Let us be a family again. Something in her wording sent a chill through me. It didn't sound like an apology. It felt more like a negotiation. Or worse, a sugar-coated trap. I hadn't planned to go, but then I thought, maybe I needed to hear them. Not to forgive, but to be sure I wasn't mistaken anymore. Dinner was held in the familiar dining room at my parents' house, the same place where I'd once learned how to carve chicken properly, blown out the candles on my 16th birthday, sat in silence while my father preached about family tradition. The room remained unchanged, warm yellow lights, polished walnut table, crystal glasses glowing in the candlelight. But the air was starkly different. Emily sat across from me in a deep red dress, lips perfectly done, as if for a photo shoot instead of a serious conversation. My parents sat on either side of her, leaning toward me like quiet attorneys. I hadn't even sat down when Emily said, "I don't understand why you're making such a big deal about the car. Haven't you always helped me?" Her voice was calm, without a hint of remorse. I looked at my father, arms crossed, as always. "We all know this isn't worth escalating." Emily apologized, "And your mother only acted because she believed you'd agree." I didn't respond right away. I reached into my bag and placed on the table the car loan contract, the bank's confirmation of forgery, screenshots of the messages, one by one, like reassembling the truth. "This isn't about the car," I said slowly. "It's about my name, my signature, the trust I've built over a decade, used without my consent. And I'm the one who pays the price if I stay quiet." My mother sighed and pressed her fingers to her temple like someone burdened by an unwanted meeting. "Samantha, you're too sensitive. You know Emily's been struggling to find her path. Can't you be a bit more flexible? You're the most stable one in the family." I let out a short, humorless laugh. Stability doesn't mean I should carry everything. Strength doesn't mean being taken advantage of without protest. Emily slapped her palm lightly against the table, rattling the water in her glass. "You're just jealous because I get attention. You've always thought I was the favorite. But have you ever asked how I feel? How do you feel using my name to buy a car without telling me?" She didn't answer. My mother cut in gently, trying to steer the conversation away. "We should resolve this peacefully. You're not seriously thinking of involving a lawyer, are you, Samantha? That would only hurt everyone more." I looked at them, one by one. I used to think they didn't know they were hurting me, that they were unaware, but here they were, not denying, justifying, blaming, expecting my silence as if that were my role, just because we shared blood. I gathered the documents and stood up. My hands shook slightly, but my voice didn't. If pain is inevitable, then at least let me choose the reason. And this time, I won't let anyone use my name without my permission. My mother called after me, her voice sharper now. "Samantha, if you walk out like this, you'll be cutting yourself off from this family." I stopped at the door but didn't turn around. "Mom, this family cut me off a long time ago. I'm just accepting it now." I drove home in silence. No music. No cabin light. The streetlights sliced across the windshield like countdown beams, pulling me further away from that house, from a relationship I once believed was sacred. I knew I'd be slandered, blamed, seen as the traitor to blood. But I also knew that if I didn't stand up today, my voice would forever be nothing but an echo in a home that locked its doors long ago. I had finally accepted the truth. Some families only exist as long as you stay obediently silent. And I no longer wished to be obedient. In the days following that dinner, I couldn't sleep well. Not from fear, but because it felt like my entire system was being reprogrammed, as if every relationship, every memory was undergoing a deep audit, line by line, re-examining all the unwritten agreements I had silently signed with my own compliance. I didn't post anything on social media, didn't reply to any messages from relatives. Instead, I called Leah. We met on a Wednesday afternoon at a small cafe near her office, the same one we used to visit in college, back when we still believed adults always knew right from wrong. Leah ordered her usual latte. I chose ginger tea, the drink I turn to when I know something big is coming. She didn't ask polite questions. She simply placed her hand gently on mine, silent, but saying, "I see you, truly see you." I told her everything, the forged contract, the messages, the way my father had crossed his arms without once asking how I felt. When I finished, Leah exhaled slowly. "They won't change, Samantha, but you can change how much power they have to hurt you." That sentence stayed with me all day, and when I got home, instead of collapsing onto the couch like usual, I took out a blank sheet of paper and drew a line down the middle. On one side I wrote, "What I've accepted," and on the other, "What I deserve." On the left were things like paying off someone else's debts out of guilt, pretending I'm okay to preserve the family image, being excluded but still making the first move to reconnect. On the right, for the first time in years, I wrote, being respected when I say no, being loved without having to prove my worth, being fully present in the space I helped hold together. The next morning, I booked a session with a therapist, Dr. Leila Nguyen, who specializes in healing from family-based emotional trauma. I didn't expect miracles. I just knew that if I wanted a different life, I needed a different path. The first session wasn't about Emily or my mother. It was about me, about when I started believing that my success was selfish, that setting boundaries was rude, that asking for fairness was being ungrateful. Layla didn't give advice. She listened. And when I paused to sip from a cup of tears, she said softly, I don't see a rebellious daughter. I see a woman learning how to be herself again. A few weeks later, I received a message from Aunt Natalie, my mother's older sister, whom I'd always thought of as distant and reserved. The message was brief. Just, if you need a quiet place, my door is open. I don't remember how long I cried after reading that, but that evening, I drove to her home, carrying a small strawberry tart, the kind she used to bake every summer when I visited as a child. She didn't ask questions. She simply placed a hand on my shoulder as I stepped in, then brewed us 2 cups of peppermint tea. We sat in silence for a long time, 2 people who had heard too much noise for too long, finding clarity only in the quiet. Then she spoke. About the times my mother had manipulated her. About being written out of my grandfather's will for not fitting the family image. About the pain of being made into a shadow because she didn't play the role someone else had scripted. She looked at me, her eyes sad but not broken. You're not the first in this family to be hurt by love disguised as control, but you can be the first to set the boundary. I nodded. Said nothing. Just nodded, as if making a silent, enduring promise. One weekend afternoon, I reorganized my bookshelf. Just a small task, but I noticed I was keeping the books about autonomy, boundaries, and healing. In the center of the shelf, I placed a new photo frame. Leah and me, laughing wildly on the beach, our hair flying in the wind, no one holding a perfect pose. It was the first time I saw myself radiant in a photo that wasn't curated. I used to think I was just different from my family, that I didn't quite fit. But now I know. I wasn't the flaw in their design. I was the honest reflection of everything they tried to conceal. And that truth. It wasn't wrong. It simply no longer belonged in a place that asked me to shrink to stay. On a Monday morning, just when things seemed to be settling down, I received a call from Marcus, my financial advisor. His voice, usually calm and measured, held an undercurrent of urgency this time. Samantha, we just received a report from a credit system. There's a new credit card application under your name, with the delivery address listed as a charity office in Palm Springs, the place where my mother works. I froze. Again? Marcus didn't answer right away. Instead, he sent me a scanned confirmation slip from the store, along with an image of the signature. This time, the signature was even more convincing than the last, so close that any outsider would easily believe it was mine. I laughed. Not out of humor, but from the surreal realization that my identity had once again been stolen by the very woman who once held me as a child, cut my birthday cake, and promised unconditional love. I called my attorney, Natalie. Her tone was firmer than before. There were no soft options left. Samantha, this is the 3rd time. And this time, it's no longer speculation. All signs point to a deliberate repeat offense. I strongly advise you to file a fraud complaint with the bank immediately. If you hesitate, your credit score will continue to suffer. I nodded. Even though I was alone, it felt like a nod that no one could pull me back from. You can request that the bank repossess the Mercedes. They now have sufficient evidence. Unless Emily or your parents pay the debt in full, the car will be legally repossessed. I exhaled quietly. Do it. Please. 3 days later, the bank confirmed the fraud and emailed me the repossession schedule. I read every word. Not because I needed to check, but because I wanted to remember. Remember the exact moment when I was no longer the one watching my family cross the line, but the one who finally said, enough. That afternoon, the car was repossessed. I wasn't there, but Emily was. I knew because she called me almost immediately. 5 missed calls, then a flood of messages, first blame, then guilt-tripping, then pleading. Do you know I needed that car for work? Why are you trying to ruin my life? Are you happy seeing someone else suffer? I didn't reply. I just blocked her number. 10 minutes later, my mother called. Her voice was cold and sharp, the anger barely hidden. Samantha, what did you just do? Have you completely lost your humanity? We're family. I didn't shout. I didn't defend myself. I just hit end call. Then I blocked her too. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, a mug of hot cocoa in hand. a college habit I'd kept, something small that made me feel like I still had control over something. I looked out the window. No rain, no wind, but my heartbeat was steady. No more tightness in my chest. I knew they wouldn't stop. They'd tell their version of the story, to relatives, to social media, to anyone who would listen. And sure enough, the next day, Emily posted a teary video, claiming she was betrayed by blood, that the repossessed car was a symbol of her independence, and that some people would rather destroy someone's happiness just to prove they're right. I didn't watch it, but others sent me the link. In the comments, I saw relatives chiming in. Even Taylor, my cousin, who once sat beside me at every Christmas, wrote, "Family is about forgiveness, not punishment." I didn't blame them. I just turned off my phone, deleted the social media apps, and placed a handwritten note on my desk. You don't need others to understand you once you've understood yourself. That night, I received an email from Natalie. The bank has initiated a criminal investigation. Your mother is now facing charges related to signature forgery and unauthorized use of personal information. Her attorney just sent a settlement offer. I opened the attachment. The offer included full payment of legal fees, an admission of the forgery, and a written commitment to cease all contact with me in the future. In exchange, I would not press criminal charges in court. I read every clause. I didn't feel triumphant nor relieved, just closure. I texted Natalie. I agree. Let's proceed. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a victim. I wasn't just resisting, I was protecting. Not to be seen by them, but to ensure I never had to look back again. A few weeks later, the legal settlement was finalized. Through her attorney, my mother admitted to the forgery and agreed to have no further contact with me, permanently. The feeling I had upon receiving that commitment wasn't victory. It felt more like finding a rusted key, one that didn't open anything grand, but at least allowed me to close a door that had stayed ajar far too long because no one dared to shut it. I moved into a smaller apartment in a quiet neighborhood near the park. Gone were the wine cabinets for entertaining, the grand living room that could host 10, but I had a small balcony where I replanted a pot of white orchids, the kind my mother once called bland. I loved them precisely for their subtlety. They didn't beg for attention. They just bloomed on their own terms. Every morning, I brewed coffee by hand, not the quick capsules I used to rely on. I waited for the water to boil, poured it slowly over coarse grounds, and inhaled deeply as the aroma rose, as if I were teaching myself how to live slowly again. Marcus, my financial advisor, sent me an updated report. My credit score had been restored, the fraudulent loan completely wiped from the record. He added a handwritten note at the end of the email. It's not just your finances that are back in order, it's your worth too. I printed that line and tucked it into a book by my bedside, not because I needed the reminder, but because I wanted to see it each night before sleep, to remember there's nothing more valuable than returning to yourself. That weekend, Leah, my best friend, came to visit. We sat on the floor with glasses of red wine, wooden chairs pulled up toward the window, watching the maple trees begin to turn. She talked about work, her new relationship, and I told her I'd started drawing again, not to become an artist, just to learn how to place a line on a page without fearing mistakes. She clinked her glass gently against mine and said, "Here's to you, for living." I smiled, for the first time feeling that phrase wasn't hollow. For choosing to live, not just survive. I continued therapy with Dr. Layla Nguyen. Each session we sat in 2 armchairs, sometimes letting the wind whisper through the windows for 10 full minutes without a word. She taught me that silence isn't scary, so long as it's no longer filled with fear. I began journaling every night, not to explain, just to acknowledge. One night I wrote, "I don't need anyone's forgiveness. I just need to release myself." That first fall without a "ready for Thanksgiving yet?" message from my mother, I hosted a small dinner at Aunt Natalie's, the only woman in the family who had ever dared to step outside the cycle I had just broken from. Ryan, my cousin who was once cast out of the family business for speaking the truth, was there too. We raised our glasses to those once called traitors, who were really just the first to wake up. My parents kept their word and never reached out again. Neither did Emily. But one day, I got a text from an unknown number. Just one line. "You were right. But I can't come back." I didn't reply. I didn't delete it either, though I knew it was from Emily. I left it there, like a splintered shard from a broken mirror, sharp but no longer cutting. At Christmas, I went to Vermont to be with Leah and her family. We wore scarves, baked cookies, knitted together, and joined a fundraiser for women who had experienced financial abuse. I didn't share my story. I just listened, and in those trembling eyes, I saw myself, no longer alone. I no longer needed to be believed. I just needed to be. And if anyone were to ask what changed after everything, I wouldn't talk about the car or the credit report or any confrontation. I would tell them about an afternoon spent watering a pot of white orchids, sunlight spilling gently through the window. That was when I knew I had returned. Not loudly, not in triumph, but fully. And I no longer need to be recognized, only to live truthfully as myself. If you were in my shoes, how would you have handled it? If you agree with what I did, please like and subscribe. If you don't, tell me how you would have done it in the comments. I'll respond to every message. Thank you for listening to my story, and I'll see you in the next one.